mic on? Yeah, it is. Perfect. What's cracking? What's popping? What's shaking, everybody? Happy Friday. We are here for another episode of the comic cinematic universe with Chill and Grace. So I'm here. I'm Chill. Grace, say
I'm
what's
Grace.
up.
Hello. I love how you are like continuing with the Slytherin vibes with like the green back
And I wasn't supposed to have this
light.
glasses on my chair.
Oh.
I'm trying. Well, say the light that I have, I like. Say it's a long. I can't really describe it. It's like one of those LEDs to where you can just change the color throughout.
Yeah.
So it's just like a line of light basically, and I got a little bit of green and a little bit of blue, and it was by request actually, because in this studio here, this studio is half studio, half spa. So this lighting is actually setting a mood for the other half of the studio here. So it's a
I love that.
multi-purpose light. Okay.
I love that. I love you're like this is half studio, half spa. That
Mm-hmm.
sounds like a great combination.
It is.
Funny, I actually have like my little corner light pink today. I was like, I wonder if it'll shine through. And like as soon as I logged on, I was just like, it doesn't. But
Oh
I
man.
just
Oh
think it's
man.
funny on the same day that you have that, I attempted to have like a pink light because I've been promising this for like a year and it
Mm-hmm.
has not come into fruition. But I have a vision, guys, for this milk. I do. I promise. It's just
It'll get there.
delays upon
It'll
it'll
get
get
there.
there. We're
Yep.
just talking.
Yep.
Life is busy,
Yep.
it's crazy.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, today the game plan is we're going to be talking episode 10 of The Sandman and episode 8 of She-Hulk. And I would love to end today talking about She-Hulk. So let's go ahead
Let's
and
do it.
start with Sandman. All right. So, uh, Sandman episode 10. This is what we're going to call the official like conclusion to the season because there is an 11th episode, but it's different. It takes away from like the actual story. Uh, it starts off as a cartoon and you have no idea how it relates, and then the other half it goes into like another story or whatnot. But we're gonna dive into that episode next week. So as of right now, we're going into the conclusion of Sandman episode 10. So Grace, go ahead and kick it off real quick.
All right. So this episode pretty much starts exactly where the last one ends. We are like narrowed into this hallway with like a trail of blood because last episode finished with Corinthian basically saving the kids, right?
Yeah.
From I forget his name. He's
Fun
basically
Park
like
or something like
he's
that.
the Disneyland
It's like
killer.
it's Fun Park. His name.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what it is. That's
Mm-hmm.
what it is. But yeah, so basically, starts off exactly where it ended last week, and we have Corinthian kind of just talking to the kids, in a way that we've seen him do a lot already. In that, I've saved you twice, guys. I've saved you twice. I'm not like forcing you guys to stay here. Obviously, it's not safe in the hotel. If you leave here, then the Raven's gonna find you. Dream's gonna kill you. So like, I'm not gonna lie. Like, he's making a pretty compelling case for these kids to stay in the freaking hotel room. You know what I mean? Like, and that's kind of what we saw when he was speaking to Jed in the last episode by himself. It's like he gives a lot of reason for these kids to trust him. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
They don't know the full story and everything. But that's kind of how this episode starts off. And of course, lots of things happen from there.
Well, I think here, even here in this moment, in this introduction of Corinthian and what's the Dream Vortex name again?
Rose.
Rose. Like in that interaction, I feel like right then and there, either she said it or she knew that he was the missing nightmare.
He said it. She was like, "You're the missing dream or missing nightmare." Yeah, yeah, missing
Right.
nightmare.
Right.
And so she obviously comes to him with like awareness of who he is because
Mm-hmm.
obviously, um, Morpheus was talking about the missing nightmares, and he tells her because she mentions like, "Oh, dreams watching me," and she kind of uses that synonymous to dreams protecting me, and he basically dissolves that, telling her like, the moment that you start to draw like the dreams into the real world, he's going to kill you,
Mm-hmm.
And so that puts her in a very weird position because it's like, it's not like her experience with Morpheus is that great at this point, right? Because remember, we went past the whole the killing of her best friend's lover in the dream basically sent him to like some afterlife, and threatened to steal the baby. Like they're not on the best of terms, let's
Right.
just say, in this position either.
Hmm.
So you can kind of see where she stands, because I think basically they end up in the hotel room up until she starts dreaming, and then like that whole kind of, I'd call it a little bit of a battle ensues.
Right, but like before that quote unquote battle ensues, yes, like they're in the room, and then like last episode we were talking about how there's a serial convention, aka serial killer convention, and uh, say yes, Corinthian leaves the kids in the room, but then he goes off to be the quote unquote keynote speaker, right? So
Mhm.
in that, like everybody is kind of well, everybody there has been looking forward to actually seeing or even meeting Corinthian, the great Corinthian who's been terrorizing for at least a century now, and it, it's a matter of like in this conversation that he's having to this crowd, he's pretty much, what is that? Is that you?
What's going on? They
Do
have the
you?
air conditioning. Is that what you're hearing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
That's okay.
But yeah, like say he is pretty much chatting it up, and he, without us the viewers watching, is pretty much telling everybody to picture their perfect scenario, and that right there is pretty much the, I think, what he needed just to quote unquote overpower Dream when Dream actually showed up to this convention, right?
I mean, what it ends up looking like is he intentionally kind of triggered the vortex, you know what I mean? By having all of these collectors essentially dream. You know
Right.
what I mean? Like that's exact. They're kind of daydreaming, fantasizing their favorite scenario in their case, like kind of like their own little niche when it comes to their art of serial killing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Collecting. And so I think like this was so intentional. I think it was like so smart on Corinthian's part, because basically he leaves Rose with no choice but to stay in the room, which is all he needs. Like I think he just needs her to be in the vicinity. And so by the time that Morpheus inevitably makes his entry, and they have this kind of dramatic moment where they're meeting eye to eye for over a century, right, since Morpheus's capture,
Yeah.
he kind of has like the upper hand, right? Because he knows he's setting up this like chaotic situation,
But
and
here,
he's kind of, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say, like just with this chaotic situation, this is where my question lies. Just because, say with Corinthian, right? I would have known him initially, just this whole entire season, as to be a nightmare that has just been terrorizing the streets, right, of the real world, right? But like, how does a being like Corinthian know how to, I don't want to say control the situation, but get the upper hand on Dream? Because I feel like this is something that, if anything, the Dream should really only have knowledge about as far as how the vortex affects him. But it seemed like Corinthian is like, if I lure the vortex here, get her to nap, and then have my whole following here just take a daydream real quick, then this is my chance to take Dream out. Like, how would he know to do that?
Well, something, it's not like they have like this deep understanding of how the vortexes work. Even Morpheus has such limited understanding of how they're formed, anything really. They just know that these things basically draw out dreams into the real world, and they're capable of like the destruction of the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the basic knowledge that people have, the understanding. And Corinthian obviously having this objective to take out Morpheus so that he can kind of just continue to roam the world.
Mm-hmm.
I think he just uses that knowledge. And the same thing that actually Lyda tells Rose, that if you're capable of destroying worlds, you're capable of like taking out Dream. And I think it's the same thing that Corinthian has kind of, the conclusion has come to. You know what I mean? So
Okay.
I don't think it's too far fetched that he would have been able to kind of put two and two together. I think it's information that people in the dreaming like understand, and I think you just kind of took it to that next step of like, okay, this might be actually my doorway of taking him out,
Okay.
manipulating Rose and getting to that.
Right. Like just watching, I was just like, I don't know. It just seems a little easy, even though it's not, because Dream is who he is. But it just, it kind of added up to the point to where I was like, okay, why hasn't anybody else like tried to do this in the past? You know?
Right, right. And also keep in mind, it's not like a vortex comes every other year. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I think there's like a big chunk of time between when these things occur.
I think it's once a
Um,
century. I think it's every 100 years.
yeah, I think that is what they said.
Mm-hmm.
And so it also just depends on like, okay, like who is trying to take out Corinthian. You
Mm-hmm.
know what I mean? Like I guess like the point that you're saying, like maybe like Lucifer could have been someone to kind of thought of this a couple centuries past or something like that, or even his brother or something. So I think it's like a valid question to have, and I think it's like TBD. I don't really know, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Something I thought was really cool when they kind of had this confrontation after like a decade, or sorry, a century really, with Corinthian and Sandman. Sandman makes this like statement saying that you're infecting others with your joy for death. And that kind of makes it sound like Corinthian is kind of the catalyst of maybe even like serial killers, which is kind of interesting because the decade that he comes into, it's kind of like the decade where you start to get a really good like what's the word I'm trying to think, like you doc there's a lot of documentation of like serial killers. Like I think
Mm-hmm.
like the first documented serial killer was in like New England or something like that. Not New England, I'm so sorry, it's like in England, and I forget which one it was, that it's a pretty famous one. And so I don't
What,
know,
like
I thought
Jack
it
the
was kind of
Ripper or something like
cool.
that?
Was it Jack the Ripper? I think that's the one I'm thinking of, but it's kind of cool, like the timing and that statement he made. It's almost as if like he's saying Corinthian is maybe the catalyst to like the birth of what we know to be a serial killer. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was kind of cool. Obviously, there's a lot of inference going on there, but the way he said that, and being that you're in the room with all these serial killers, and they talk about he's basically the original,
Mm-hmm.
it kind of makes it sound like that, and I think that's I don't know, being someone who's very into like true crime like that, I just thought that was a cool statement.
Gotcha. Yeah, I didn't really think too much into it. I just for one, as far as them kind of linking, well, first getting him there, one, and then when Dream is actually having the conversation with him, and it's like I can see how Dream could make the quote unquote connection, but I'm still, I guess, a little confused in terms of how he sparked this movement of serial killing.
I mean,
If that was
he's a
said, I may have
nightmare.
missed it.
Yeah, like I mean, he's a nightmare, right? Like I think, and it's kind of what he was saying is like instead of like serving your purpose, like you infected others with your joy for death, and I think that's kind of what like they're indirectly saying because in different parts they make statements saying like he was the original, you know, into play. Like I'm just it there's a lot of little dots that kind of for me I'm just like that's kind of cool. Like I just like the way that they did that.
Gotcha, gotcha, gotcha.
And I'm just like looking up when Jack the Ripper was in, I don't know, action.
When was he active in serial killing?
Active. There you go. That's like the word I
Mm-hmm.
was thinking of. I guess this would be before the time of when this events happened because this happened in 1888, and I don't know when it is that it is in London. It's the East End of London, but I
Mm-hmm.
don't remember when it is that a dream, you know,
I think it's
was
like
captured.
I think
Was
it's
captured. You know, I can't
1880.
remember. What was that?
I think it's like 1880.
Is it? You're
Mm-hmm.
kidding me.
Mm-hmm.
Is it?
Because
Dude, it tracks.
I feel
It's
like if
done.
anything, because the guy, his friend Dream's Dream, they would meet like on I think every 80th year or something like that. Like on like 1980, 1480, 15, like all that. I feel like it was around that time, and then that one year that Dream
It was
didn't show
1880.
up. I think it was like 1880.
Okay. Then
Yeah.
I think this is such a cool thing that they did. Okay, because if you look at the year 1880, right?
Mm-hmm.
Jack the Ripper, which is he's kind of like coined as like the first quote unquote serial killer, or documented serial killer, happened in 1888, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then with like Morpheus saying, you know, you inspired others like with your love of killing, and then the verbiage that all of these collectors use by saying that he was the first, and they really hold him to this high like statue. And that just excites me. I think that's so cool. Like they weaved it really well. Like that was like talk about some continuity. That was great. That's
Yeah,
great.
I think I may rewatch episode one just to fact check the year. and
If
then
you're wrong, don't tell me.
but if
Let
I'm
me
right,
just
it's
live
going
in
on the
this.
gram. That's my clip. That's my clip that I'm throwing up.
We were
But
wrong.
yep, yep.
Yeah.
Where were we?
Well, from here we have Rose kind of do this badass thing, similar to what she did in maybe it was either the last episode or the episode before that, where she kind of takes control of the situation because these two, Morpheus and Corinthian, are kind of pinning her back and forth of like, do this, do that, do this, do that, serve this, and she kind of like stops that mayhem and basically says, I'm out. And
Mm-hmm.
then like wakes up, like she takes control of the situation very similarly to when she um consciously entered the land of like the dream. I forget the name of his land, but where Morpheus
I
comes
hear you.
from.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought that was really cool. I think that it's just like I think showcasing like her I don't know if like leadership is the role, but like she's really taking the reins on this, in a very stressful situation. And I thought
Mm-hmm.
that was pretty powerful. I really like that for her.
Um, I like it and I don't.
Why?
I like it because yes, it's cool that she's able to kind of take control of the situation, but I don't want to say that it falls under that. I don't know if it's called a trope, but like the strong female lead trope or whatnot of just
You
that.
think so?
Yeah, I like. It's like it's cool. She was able to honestly, since the beginning of discovering this power, is like she's just like, all right, I'm out. All right, I'm out. So I'm just like, okay, so she's obviously just controlling the situation, and I don't know if it came on a little too strong here, but like that's why it's like I like it, but at the same time, I'm real iffy.
See, I feel like this is only like the second time that she's able to do it with like full control the way that she did here and in that other example that we kind of called about before. So I think I don't know. I guess you could make the claim that maybe it is repetitive and falls under that trope.
Mm-hmm.
But given like kind of the extent of the power that they're saying that she does have, I feel like it does make sense for the situation. But I feel like there's always a fine line with that.
But let me
I feel, go
let me
ahead.
let me ask you though. Then, like, say because of this actress, right, and because of her now being like a black actress, and in the comics she was a white blonde. Like I just feel like in this moment they're just like, okay, we just need that strong black lead here, and it's
What
just
would be, I mean, what would be like what would be the approach you think would have been better? I guess is what my question is. Or what would have made more sense for the story if that's like you know what I
for
mean?
her
If that's what
for
you're saying.
me for me for her to die right then and there. I'm sorry.
I
It
mean,
just and it's
yeah.
like I'm not hating on it, but like say this is now because we're currently talking about a battle of three people. There's Rose, there's Corinthian, and then there's Dream, right? And then yes, she's a dream vortex, but this is a dream vortex that is now newly kind of discovering her powers, and with that, it's just like by this point, she's already in control and she overpowers two, well, one never ending being, but like still like two immortals. You get what I'm saying?
Sure. See, I have 2 points on that. One, it would make sense for the story because it's like with the way that this series has been very Game of Thronesy, and that you think it's like almost like you kind of build rapport with this one character where you feel the safety net of like, oh, okay, hey, this is their story, this is their main thing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then it's not, and then you're like, oh, damn, and it keeps happening, right? Happened
Right.
with I forget like the original little like
The
the
Magus and his
young
son.
the Magus, the son, and then the other son, John, and like
Mm-hmm.
it's happened several times. So honestly, like that approach wouldn't have been like shocking. It would have been like, are you kidding me? You allowed me to like this character, build the story with her, like have a lot of like meaning behind what's going on in her story, and then just kill her. Like in any other series, it would just be like, what's the point of that? Why would you build rapport with this one character just to let it kind of cleanly die off like that simple. Um, but in this series, it would actually have made sense. You know what I mean? Like, so I wouldn't be upset with that if that was the outcome because it would have made sense with the story. You know what I mean?
Um.
However, the way that they weaved it is what
Mhm.
sets up season two. You know what I mean? With the way that it ends.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask you a question that's totally off topic here. Okay.
Sure.
Uh, Daenerys Targaryen.
Mm.
Should she have lived or should she have died?
The outcome of Daenerys Targaryen was never the problem. Like, it makes so much sense that she would have ended up the way that she ended up. It's the way that they went about it. Was it, I think, being that they built up a fan base over like a decade and then so quickly unraveled her into this kind of the descending into the madness, very similar to Wanda, which is why I kind of mentioned her when we did the breakdown.
Mm-hmm.
That was the issue, because then instead of people kind of coming to the almost like, if they would have slowed it down more and maybe just given a whole season of her descending and then a whole season leading into the events that did end up happening,
Mm-hmm.
I think the fandom would have absorbed it a little bit better, because if we could have been given the time to almost end up like with how Jon Snow ended up, where he reluctantly kills her because he loves her, like we love her, but he knows that she's got to be taken off the board. Like, if we could have been in that similar situation, I think they could have, it would have like been justified. I
So
don't think the
you
problem is the outcome. I think it's the fact that they rushed the season, and I feel like the fandom is very similar in terms of their opinions on that.
will say with Game of Thrones and that last season, which everybody knows was the shortest season out of all
Mm-hmm.
of them, right? And then yeah, it seemed a little rushed, but you're saying even then, like I was expecting her and Jon Snow to pretty much walk off in the sunset, and if even we even as a viewer, yes, we know it would have been wild and crazy just because of the path that Daenerys was kind of going towards, but love would have won, you know. But it just
See,
keeps.
the thing is, I'm gonna argue that, and that I believe me, I if I had like a choice, that would have been the freaking answer. I swear, like that's what I would have wanted to see as a fan. But it's also, it's like, would that have been true for what Game of Thrones is? It's like, this is not a fairy tale, and it's proven that multiple times. So I feel like it would not have been an authentic ending for Game of Thrones, as much as I would have loved it. I feel like the way that Daenerys' story ended, that's a very justified ending for her story. I think it's just the A to B. On the one thing though is, like, Jon Snow should have been on the throne. Why the hell is Bran there? Like that, and that alone is like, no, I don't like that ending. But when you ask specifically about Daenerys, like her demise, like it makes sense. It's just that they rushed it so much that we were defensive instead of kind of landing in the emotions that Jon Snow had, where we're like, okay, like, she's gonna, it kind of has to happen as much as we hate it, you
Okay,
know?
so
Um,
you say that Game of Thrones, it's just like we couldn't get that fairy tale ending, but now reeling it back to this show, to the Sandman, that's pretty much what we got. Coincidentally, fairy tale and dream world and all that's all being the same realm. It's like that's what
yeah,
we're
yeah.
getting. That's what we're getting with Rose. And just to kind of fast forward into the episode, it's just like we find out that her great great grandmother was the OG dream vortex that Desire somehow manipulated in her dreams to continuing to have a baby and a family and so on and so forth. But like the story ends with just Rose just handing off the quote unquote vortex to her great grandmother, you know. So it's like Rose did get the fairy tale ending, which I wasn't even thinking that we were gonna get. Yes, we got the grandma in the library and everything like that, but like as far as the grandma's concerned, I was thinking she was out, she was wherever she was, and she was chilling. And then eventually, if there was a fairy tale ending, the black girl was gonna go live with grandma and the brother. But uh, instead, like while watching this episode, I'm already expecting Game of Thrones, and I'm expecting Rose to be taken out.
And that's where I completely agree with you. And that's what I was saying. Like, in any other kind of story, that would make no sense. Like, why would you build rapport? Why would you make us like and be invested in this person's story just to have such a simple point blank end to it? Like, such a tragic ending. But in here, it would have made sense. Like, I agree. Like, that ending that you speak of, like in this point where, with Corinthian and Morpheus,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that would have made sense with the story, because they kept doing that throughout the series. Same thing like Game of Thrones, right? This
Yeah.
isn't a fairy tale. They didn't really outline it to be so. So that outcome would have made sense to me. Like, would I liked it? No, but like it's kind of like what's been happening in this whole series, right? Like, it has a lot. It's had a lot of the emotional like pushes and pulls this way, and I think it's very like similar to how Game of Thrones did it. And I love that we went through that whole um kind of side note, because I feel like it emphasizes that exact point that you're making. So this was so perfect. Guys, this
I
wasn't
knew
scripted, man. This is live.
I knew you would understand if I just brought it to Game of Thrones terms.
Because you know how I feel about it. Like we've talked about it when we talked about like Multiverse of Madness. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's not that Wanda like spiraled out of control. Like that's so genuine to her stories. It's just the way that they went about it and the way it was rushed created resistance versus almost like a Jon Snow situation where you're like reluctantly accepting the fact that this is kind of what's got to happen. You know?
Yeah.
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 So yeah, completely agree. Absolutely.
Yeah. So with that ending, it was okay. Like just because, like you said, like this whole season, no matter the episode has been dark, and then they just end it on a lighter note, you know. And I don't know. I was hoping for an even darker, a darker
I
ending.
mean, okay, and this is the thing. Maybe this is what foreshadowed it, or not foreshadowed it, but maybe this is what kind of covered up that whole inconsistency when it comes to Rose's story and the overall way that the series has come about, right? Like that's
Mm-hmm.
the outlier because it did end up kind of like a fairy tale fluid. Like let's just
Yeah.
use that terminology. I think the thing that kind of hid that from my observation was really that it was very icky when we found out like who the father is. Right? We have Unity, who's like she's come to terms with like I was Vortex. This is like I'm gonna make this sacrifice and my grandchildren can live. And she says that kind of like almost grateful for the fact that she was able to at least have this like live in this dream, and that she'll always remember like the golden eyes of like her partner. And that's when it clicks to Morpheus that it was his brother,
Desire.
thank you, Desire, that basically manipulated and orchestrated all of this from this jump. And it's
Mm-hmm.
crazy because when Morpheus goes to confront him, it's nothing more than a game to him. Like these are like this is a generation, like this is like three generations of lives that he just like messed with. And to him it's like this simple coy game. You know what I mean? So I guess like because that element of it to me was so horrifying, like I think that's why I didn't really get so upset initially by looking at the by like that fairy tale ending that Rose kind of ended up getting. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
For me, maybe that's what balanced it to make the ending feel a little bit more genuine to the overall series. But
Yeah.
again, I don't disagree with what your statement with Rose is because more we kind of like discuss it, I'm like, you know what? And I wonder, is it the powerful female lead trope that is involved? Is it like the lead black character? Like, what is it that you know what I mean? Because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes they try too hard, and it's like just give us stories, just give us
Right.
genuine stories. You don't
Right.
gotta, you know what I mean? So it's hard. It's hard to say.
It is hard to say. That's why I'm wishy washy. Like, I
I
can't give
agree.
it the
I feel the
definitive
same way.
answer.
I feel the same way. But yeah, like, how did you feel about that reveal? Like, did you see that coming? I didn't.
In terms of Unity, like,
Yeah, Unity and Desire.
I of course I didn't see it coming. I of course just because of what happened to Rose's friend, you know, with her getting pregnant as well. I after getting that from that story, I would assume that somehow someone in her dream, in Unity's dream, just impregnated her. And I mean, yes, that's what happened, but I wouldn't have thought it to be one of the endless like desire or something like that.
Agree, agree. And we talked about it. I think, I mean, whichever episode it is that Lyda got pregnant, we talked about like this is kind of the indirect answer to what happened to Unity.
Mm-hmm.
But agreed. Like I didn't expect it to be Desire, and honestly, the moment they came to that realization, I was like, ugh, I don't like this anymore.
Yeah.
I'm sad again. You know what I mean? So that's kind of for me what unraveled the fairy tale. And I really didn't even see that kind of inconsistency until you brought it up. But yeah, and this pretty much I think will set up essentially what's going to happen in season two. Obviously, Desire is not done, right? He said like next time I'm coming for blood.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously this isn't the first time that he's tried to provoke Morpheus, like we kind of see, because when he confronts him, he's like, "Oh darn!" It's kind of like, okay, did you ever watch Dora the Explorer? Explorer.
Sorry.
No? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's kind of like when they would it would be like swiper no swiping, swiper no swiping, and it would just keep happening like, ah, you darn little like fox. It's just like, it was like that. You know what I mean? Like a
Right.
little slap on the wrist. That's kind of what it felt like. So it's definitely this isn't the first time he's done it. It's not going to be the last time. So I think we're going to definitely see that happen again in the next season. And we still haven't met quite a few of the the siblings. So
But
that's definitely, we still have room to explore.
I would say with the conversation that Desire had with Despair when he kind of let her know that he was plotting, like she had already said, it's like you tried this like a few times before and it didn't work. So it's like we know that he is, if we're gonna compare it to another character in another universe, he's basically like a Loki that's always trying,
Yeah.
who's always up to something. He's just like the endless of mischief, basically, if that's what we're gonna call it. They're not gods; they're just the
Sure.
endless, you know. So, uh, with that, I like as much as I can assume that he would play a part in season two. I think now more season two is gonna deal with Lucifer and whatever floating eye creature that it was talking to. I can't
Yeah.
even. It was just a shape. It was a weird,
It
a
was
shape with
weird. The
eyes.
CGI was like was weird on that.
That was a
But yeah,
questionable
it's like
CGI with that for sure.
questionable CGI. No, yeah, it's. I mean, of course, it's like that's the. I think the overarching, I could think like issue that Morpheus is going to have to handle because literally all like the kingdoms of hell have now united under Lucifer's command, and their objective is to take out the like his world, and then afterwards go for like the waking world, and then I think they say something like, and then we'll go for the Silver City, which we can imagine is
It's
like
heaven.
heaven. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
yeah.
And she said something along the lines of like God will, I don't know, she makes the I have it written down, I think, but she says something like oh yeah, some this would be something to make God absolutely livid, you know, like I love this like subtle connection to kind of just like the Catholic Christian like religion kind of meshed into this other mythology that we have, you know? Because it's something we kind of explored with Moon Knight, and it's kind of cool because this show kind of does something very similar, but a little bit more. Um, I think just that they just do it a little bit more. Um, but also knowing how this season played out, and it's going, it has so many ups and downs, and almost like mini stories within the stories. I'm sure these two plots are only going to be like the start of it. You know what I mean? Like these will probably outline everything, but we're probably going to see a whole bunch of stuff like along the way.
I think right now, as far as curiosity is concerned, um, I'm curious just to know. Yes, we haven't gotten any of the other siblings, but I'm curious just to know any if any or all siblings have like let's say like a mythology, like with you kind of talking about like Moon Knight, it kind of brought it up in my mind in terms of the mythology of these beings, you know, because we already established that Lucifer is not one of the endless; it's just something different, and but Lucifer has, or I would say, rules, let's say, demons and things like that, right? And then we have Dream that rules dreams and nightmares, and I'm curious just to know if like Desire has something like under that umbrella, and then Despair has like a certain type of following under that, you know. So I'm just kind of curious if they're actually going to open the door into letting us know a little bit more about that mythology in terms of what falls under what category.
That would be really cool, just because I think they did a good job of just kind of giving us a lot without making like direct connections, which is I think smart because it kind of provokes us to ask these exact questions. So I'm sure if in season two they get to explore it and give us a little bit more detail, I think that would be really I don't know, just satisfying, I
Mm-hmm.
guess. And in terms of like the realms, it's really funny. Like, I mean, Morpheus gets this whole entire world, and then Desire has like a freaking room that looks like a closet. Like, I'd be mad too. I'm just saying, just on how the rooms were distributed, you know?
No, 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 no. Let's not, because I would say Dream, being that he is Dream, Dream has, let's say, a quote unquote imagination, because that's all dreams are. It's just like an imagination of your subconscious or whatnot. To where, let's say, Desire just doesn't have an imagination. I feel like this room that he has is built inside of a huge statue of himself, you know? So,
Oh my God, I love that so much.
so,
Yes.
so
He's
it's
like as limited as in his own like selfish and like just ego. It's I love that.
right,
That's so perfect.
right. It's just,
So perfect.
yeah.
It's like the head of the statue, which is why it's almost like spirit done. That's what it is, guys. We
Hmm.
cracked the code.
Look, right then and
Boom.
there. Talk. All you gotta do is talk it out, you know what I'm saying?
Mark
But,
it. Clip here.
was there anything else? Because he confronted Desire and he ended that, threatened him, was like, do it again and I will murder you, basically. And then
Try me. Yeah.
after that, did we get anything else with Rose and her brother?
No, pretty much Rose and her brother were kind of like they've been through enough, just live your lives kind of thing. I mean, they have a huge fortune. They can kind of do whatever they want. They're kind of living this cute little blended world with Lyda and her son. You know what I mean? Like there's this like nice little family. They're like, we're in this together. That was kind of the end of their story.
Are they living
Rose
with
is
the? Did they
finally
end with the housemates?
and then gonna sell the house. So it's like it's I wasn't sure if Rose was gonna end up still living there because I know it was one of the weird members of the family that were like, "We'll buy the house," you know. So I wasn't sure
Oh
if that meant
right.
Rose was staying too.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's yeah. So they kind of did get their happily ever after little a fairy tale life, kind of what we talked about.
Mm-hmm.
And Rose, because she's a writer, finally was writing a story, and because we know now that there's like the library in Morpheus's world carries all the books that have ever been
Mm-hmm.
and all the books that haven't been yet, they can kind of see what's happening, which makes total sense. Because what is a book if not like literally a documentation of dreams, both nonfiction and fiction? You know what I
Right.
mean? So it makes a lot of sense. And they're kind of seeing that happen for her. So she got the fairy tale life. Morpheus, like, I mean, finally learned that he needs to like listen more. What a journey that took a century, that he just needs to like check his ego. He's on his own thing to kind of create new nightmares, new dreams, and leaves essentially the keys to the his
Lucien.
realm to Lucien.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How do you feel about like back to Corinthian, his eyes actually being teeth? Because I feel like initially when we first saw that against the blonde with the protective little necklace or whatnot, I thought that was just like, I don't know, I would say a reflection of what scared her, because I feel like we've seen his eyes be like, it was like light at one point and then maybe something else at another point. So
Like Cam.
right.
Yeah.
So I thought it was just something that pretty much scares people, but like after Morpheus kind of took care of him and brought him, kind of like took his sand and then just ended with like that little baby skull. The baby skull had teeth for eyes, you know. So that was just the real him. What do you think about that?
I guess so. See, I guess that there it wouldn't. I mean, there's no consistency to what makes them change. Like if they were just teeth consistently, I guess you wouldn't even have this question.
Mm-hmm.
But because it changed, like I would have felt very similar to what you're thinking. So I'm not too sure what to think about that. Actually, not really
Yeah.
sure. But yeah, I agree. I feel like that's the inconsistency begs like the question of like why, you know?
Yeah, I would have thought honestly that woman, the blonde woman with the necklace, John's mom, she just had like a phobia of teeth or something like that. And then when he took his
And just like
glasses off, like I was like, oh, okay, that makes more sense. She has a teeth phobia.
yeah, or so, or whatever the teeth represent. You know what I mean?
Right,
Like, I feel like that would have made sense. And honestly, for me, it's like the teeth are kind of comical.
right.
Really,
They
I feel
were
like it's kind
smiling,
of
I think.
scarier without. Yeah, I feel like he would have been scarier just like the holes in his eyes. You know, so I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how to feel about that. But yeah, I guess like we found out that that is like his base. You know what I mean? Like his just basic way of being, if you
Right.
will, you
Yeah.
know. The other thing we kind of skipped over, and I mean it's not big for like the overall plot, but the collectors did kind of get a reckoning. Morpheus basically sentences them to become aware of essentially the horrific things that they've done because they've kind of put themselves in this almost like uh psych psychosis of thinking that their actions were justified and in their narrative they're the victims, which kind of makes them incapable to feel guilt and sorrow for what they're doing. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so he basically takes away that like veil for them to genuinely feel the guilt, the pain, the grief. So a lot of them like they committed suicide,
Mm-hmm.
confessed their crimes, all these things. And so that was essentially their punishment.
Yeah. I thought that was pretty cool.
Punishment.
Well, not
Yes.
even just a punishment, just because it's just basically their desires to do what they did to make them the type of people that they are, uh, like was pretty much. I don't want. I'm such a nerd. I like because I was gonna say was installed by Corinthian, but it wasn't installed by Corinthian. It was pretty much influenced by him
Hmm.
to the point to where once Corinthian was collected by Dream, so were those desires from those people, being that those are of the dream realm. And I think that's one of the main things I kind of took from this season. Like anything of the dream world, uh, it belongs to Dream. It like the baby, being that the baby was born in the dream realm, or not born in the dream realm, but like had and made.
Conceived.
Right.
Yeah.
Dream has a claim on it, and I think it still kind of follows suit here with him kind of claiming these desires, being that they're of Corinthian, and Corinthian is of the dream realm.
Yeah, I mean, like their actions were inspired by Corinthian himself. That's exactly what Morpheus said, and obviously, like they needed to be, I guess, punished. I'm just gonna use the word. I was looking for a different word, but it's a satisfying ending to the story. Another thing that I loved, I just really like this ending, is that Galt was, I'm just going to use the word resurrected and molded into a dream like she always wanted. And I thought that was actually very satisfying. I
Yeah.
mean, I know we talked about fairy tales don't really live in this like world of Sandman. At least it hadn't for the whole season apart from here. But I enjoyed this. I'm gonna give it to them. I thought that was cool.
Such a girl.
I will come at you.
Oh man. Okay, so is that everything that we have for this episode?
Yes, that's everything we have.
Okay. Um, Awesome. So we may or may not. Well, Grace and I will chat about it because all she has to do is watch the second half, because I feel like that half of the episode of episode 11, it'll be an interesting talk. So we're gonna bring that up next Friday. But
Sure.
as for
No,
now,
it's just funny because I like literally when I hopped on, he's like, "Oh, did you watch the 11th?" I was like, "Dude, like I just watched it, but I don't even think it's related." He's like, "No, no, no, you just it's like you had to get past the cartoon part and then it makes sense."
the cartoon, I won't deny it was weird, and like I may have zoned out a couple times. And honestly, actually, no, I didn't zone out. Here's what I did: the cartoon, the cartoon started. I was kind of lost because it was a cartoon, and then on Netflix, I just kind of just fast forwarded and then just kept hitting. And because the Netflix, they allow you to see the preview of like the next few scenes or whatnot.
Right.
So I was like, oh, it actually goes into the real world. So let me actually watch this cat story in full. Because if it was a full hour of that, then yeah, I would have. I may have just
Checked out.
yeah checked out like you, honestly.
Yeah. So
But
I'll check it out and we'll talk about it in the next episode for sure when we break down the finale of She-Hulk. But before then, we're getting into this episode, this week's episode.
all right,
Chill.
we're ready.
Start us off.
All right, so I'm gonna be that guy. The guy is always the hater of the duo. You know what I'm saying? Just because it's episode 8. You know what I'm saying? Episode it's episode 8, and this and the finale is next week. And we've known about Matt Murdock since before the season came out. So we've had to wait 8 full weeks to finally get the other lawyer in the MCU. You know what I'm saying? But did it do it justice? Did he do it justice? Yes, because we already knew he was coming from No Way Home. Everybody cheered in the theater. Boom. And I can imagine if this episode was in theaters, then as soon as we're, let's say, in a courtroom scene, we're going to talk about the very beginning, but and we're in a courtroom scene, and then another lawyer is called. I was like, okay, here it is. Finally, Matt Murdock has made it onto the scene, you know. So I would imagine in a theater it would have erupted just like it did in No Way Home.
I did it in my living room, so hell yeah, I imagine that to be the case. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So this episode, it starts off more so with I think he's called Leapfrog. Is it
Yes,
Leapfrog? Okay,
sadly.
all right. There's a quote
Sad
unquote
excuse for a superhero, I'm just gonna say.
right. superhero named Leapfrog trying to fight crime. He is failing. I don't know who.
Miserably.
I don't know who chooses who gets to be a superhero. Like, because the only power I feel like we saw here were the boots that were quote unquote defective, which weren't, which we find out later. But it's just somebody attempting to be a quote unquote vigilante. He has a suit, doesn't really work against these goons, so he is suing the superhero suit maker who makes She-Hulk suit and hires She-Hulk to be his lawyer.
Yes, and the way that we see this kind of unfold is like we're seeing the events happen as they actually did, and he's narrating them, obviously, kind of like in a way that doesn't make him sound as like idiotic as he is, right? Obviously, She-Hulk is just like, this is, you are a mess. And obviously, when she hears who he got like the suit from, because initially she's like, okay, seems like a pretty simple case. But when he discloses where he got the suit, she's like, and now there's an issue because there's genuinely like a conflict of interest here. And unfortunately, like the heads of her firm are kind of like, this is kind of an important client and they really want you to work on it. So therefore, we're just going to force you to do it regardless. And lucky for her, and I think we knew this from the jump. What's his name again? Like the designer. Do you have his name? I want to say Luke. I don't know why I want to say that.
It's an L. It's an L name for sure.
I just he's coming up a lot, so I'm just gonna look it up real quick to see.
What is the name, y'all? Come on, y'all got it.
Yeah, it is Luke. Okay, it's Luke Jacobson. So, the moment we hear this, I mean, like Luke Jacobson does not seem like someone who's like easy to brush these things off. So as expected, like he gets very salty even at like the mention that someone's accusing him of like creating something that's faulty. Like on the spot just tears up like the base of what her dress was going to be for the gala. And I think Jennifer Walters also obviously gets upset, and so she's like, I'm gonna ruin you. And so then it kind of gets into the courtroom.
And in the courtroom, this is where we get the reveal of Matt Murdock that is defending Luke. And being that this is the same guy we know from Netflix. No, it's not. It's like, yeah, it's a variant, but like even in the Netflix universe, he was just like the super witty, super intelligent lawyer. Like no matter what, I don't even remember him losing a case. He may have lost some fights, but like as far as Matt Murdock in the courtroom, he was pretty badass, and he displayed that here in this episode.
Oh, so well. Like seeing him go back and forth with Jennifer Walters was so satisfying. And I don't know what it is. Like I don't know what it is about like this actor's delivery of the dialogue, but it's just like so like it's like music to your ears. Like it's satisfying. Like the way he's like, I don't know if it's like the suave that he has like behind like the dialogue. It's just so seamless and so like confident in the courtroom. You know what I mean? It's so, I don't know. It's like I love the actor. I love Matt Murdock. It's really nice to see him come back onto the screen because it's almost been a year since we saw him officially introduced into the MCU in No Way Home.
Marvel needs to quit playing and just give us everybody that we want to see now. You know what I'm saying?
We've been teased enough. We've done our due diligence.
Right.
Compensation is due.
But
no, it was good. It was good though.
But like knowing of course who he is from the comics or even the Netflix series, you know that he uses his abilities in the courtroom. Of course, nobody else knows it because they assume he's blind, and he was able to, like, once the prosecutor pulled out his boots, he was able to smell like the jet fuel, and I guess it was already known that those boots weren't supposed to, and Luke made it clear, he's like, you weren't supposed to do that, and that's how they won that case. But that's how Matt Murdock kind of also low-key kind of cheats. He kind of cheats the lawyer system as well.
I think it's so funny though how he's like, he's lying, Your Honor. Don't ask me how I know that. And like the judge is like, dude, it's obvious. Like, calm down. Right. But it's kind of just to give us that like, for those who don't know, I guess like to give us the understanding that he's able to like sense the elevations of like people's heart rates and things like that. Like that's part of the way that he knows, like for example, like how many people are in a building, you know, or where are they. And so it's like I think he keeps calling it echolocation here because Jennifer Walter is
She
like kind
called
of
it
like,
that.
ah,
She.
you no, yeah, and then he kind of repeats it, you know, he's like, it's because of my echolocation, remember, like, you know. So it becomes kind of a little banter between the two.
Yeah.
But yeah, the courtroom scene was perfect, and I think it's so funny because like Luke is we don't have enough scenes with this guy. Like this is so good. Like I just love the way that what is the word? It's very Edna mode. It's completely Edna mode, but
I
just
don't know
in
what that
like
means. What is
human
that?
form.
What is,
Incredibles, excuse me.
I don't know. Yeah. I
I
mean,
okay.
I watched The Incredibles like maybe like the year after it came out, and it was the last time I watched it. Yeah, it was good,
You
but it
are a
wasn't like
miserable
no,
man.
I'm not. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the second one too, but it was a movie I never went back to like
Edna
Lion King
Mode is an
2.
icon. Get it together.
But if you like
Yeah,
this actor, honestly, I would recommend watching the show. If you have HBO Max, oh, you do because of Game of Thrones.
match.
Watch
Yeah,
Max. You know what I'm saying. But
I know.
watch the flight attendant because he's pretty hilarious in that.
Did you mention this one to me before? It sounds familiar. I think you may have.
I think I mentioned it when we first saw him, and I said I know him from the flight attendant.
Possibly. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll check it out. I'll definitely check it out. But yeah, so basically they Jennifer Walters loses the case
Mm-hmm.
because the defendant is an idiot, you know, or no, I guess just kidding. That would have been the other way around. But her client is an idiot and
Mm-hmm.
basically misused the product, so therefore it's like the manufacturer is not
Liable.
liable
Mm-hmm.
for that. And from there we have Jennifer Walters go to the bar, and this is where we get her get very close to Matt Murdock. And I just love how she keeps checking in with the fans, and she's like, "I'm feeling this. Like, you guys feel this vibe? You guys feel this too? Like, it's just the chemistry is amazing. I love it. I stand. Like, this is great."
I just wanted to kind of point out a fact that besides losing her job, she in the season she hasn't lost a case. She's pretty much also like pretty much won every case that we've seen. Even the first case, she technically won, but
Yeah.
they kind of messed it up. I forgot what it was. It was the prosecution did something or whatever, and she ended up losing and getting fired at the same time. So this was like her like first beating of like by another lawyer, you know, and who better to do it than Matt Murdock?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think I don't know. It's like you mentioned. Like I think the only case that she technically lost was the first one, and that's just because the opposing side claimed conflict of interest,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because she saved the jurors. Um, and so yeah, this is her first loss at this law firm, which
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you know. Being also that the client that she's representing is his father is like a high profile client as well.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure like the law firm wasn't happy about it, but honestly, it's their fault. Like this guy was an idiot from the jump, as we can say, pun intended.
But I can just say with if say if Luke hired somebody else, if it wasn't Matt Murdock, then I don't think he would have won. I think just because of She-Hulk and who she is, nobody would have smelt that fuel. So and it's just so happened that Luke had Matt to do so. You know.
And I mean, like, it's not surprising because they established that Daredevil goes to him for his costume too, you
Mm-hmm.
know? So being that that's the case, I'm sure like Luke knows his secret identity, which is why I like two and
Right.
two, you know?
Right.
He was waiting for his lawyer. He's like, I got somebody. Like imagine that, like just having like literally this is just pretty badass. Like Luke is such a protected individual because he has literally an arsenal of like heroes that rely on him for something that is so crucial to their vigilanteism. You know,
Mm-hmm.
if anything happens to him, it's kind of like we saw Daredevil went after the leapfrog. You know, when he kidnapped Luke, right?
Right.
He's so protected of individual. I think it's kind of crazy. Like he's a powerful man if you just think about it. You know?
Yeah, and Matt kind of made it clear in terms of like because I think uh yeah, She-Hulk, she asked for like a list of all the heroes just to find out if any of their suits are defective. And it's like you don't really think about it until like Matt brings it up. It's like, no, just because all of these people are they don't bring out their identities, just like he kind of jabbed like some people. Everybody's kind of keeping that secret identity, so it pretty much would kind of cost Luke his job. But if anything, if that list was revealed, I'm sure that those quote unquote heroes or vigilantes or whoever who needs a costumes will probably go after him anyway. So it's just a situation to where Daredevil knew that that couldn't be released at all.
Yeah, because he's one of them, you
Yeah.
know. So,
Hmm.
yeah, it's just an interesting like concept to think about. And this is also when we get revealed that the Sokovia Accords have been repealed.
Mm.
This is big. This is big. Because we haven't really had very much of a mention of the Sokovia Accords
We talked about
since,
it like before this show. We were hoping that this was going to
yeah,
be a topic, and again, it's another topic
finally.
they bring up at the end of the season.
It's but I mean they brought it up. It would have been such a disappointment if they didn't, because I feel like this obviously sets up a lot, because this was the big thing in Civil War, which is what basically separated the Avengers to put them in such a vulnerable place to not be able to defeat Thanos in the initial attack,
Hmm.
honestly. And then I know that I wonder if they were still in effect in no, you know what? I'm misthinking things. Scratch that last sentence. But so we get the announcement that the Sokovia Accords have been dissolved or repealed.
Hmm.
And so I guess like the question is like I wonder what the impact is at this point, because the big part, and this is the relevant part at the in the case, is that the Sokovia Accords would have demanded identities to be revealed and a registry to have been made for all the superheroes. And so this being dissolved is what Matt Murdock mentions as support for him not giving names of the clients, right? Because Jennifer Walters was doing the approach kind of like if they were celebrities, which is not the situation. Like it's not apples to apples.
But I'm
Go
thinking.
ahead.
Like, sorry to cut you off, but like, say with the Accords, isn't it more so? It's like, yes, it's a registry, but I didn't think it was like a registry open to the public.
It's I mean, I don't
Like
know. That's
we don't know. It hasn't
TBD.
been, yeah, it
Yeah, we
hasn't
don't
been
know.
explained, but that's what I would have assumed, because that would have, if anything, if it were a public thing, like public knowledge, like the Accords, and anybody can see who has what powers, I feel like that would have been dangerous just in general for the heroes.
Yeah, I guess maybe if anything, he's just using this as a precedent to say, like, there is nothing that's demanding um for heroes to reveal their identity. And I mean, if there was a registration, maybe this would have been a little bit more of a blurred line,
Yeah.
So I think if anything, he's just bringing this up to kind of set the precedent of like, there's nothing really demanding that superheroes reveal their identity, and there's actually huge consequences if they did. I guess like I wonder what is like the overall, like I haven't really had time to kind of look at the discourse on the for like the fandom right now,
Hmm.
but what is the impact of this now being the case, of like the Accords having been dissolved?
Yeah, it's a good question, just because, like you said, of the conflict that we got in Civil War because of it, and we haven't really heard anything about it since Civil War. So we don't know how it has affected uh, empowered or powered beings since then, and since the repeal, we don't know anything, honestly.
Yeah, and I mean, it also begs the question, like, when were they repealed? We know that they were still in effect at the start of Infinity War, because we get Ross telling Rhodey essentially that he has to arrest these vigilantes when Cap and Nat and all of them appear.
Hmm.
And that's when he hangs up the phone and he's like, "Well, that's a court martial." So we know that they were still in effect at the beginning of Infinity War. I think it's kind of safe to say that probably when everyone snapped away, they dissolved it.
Hmm.
And yeah, that's still a pretty good chunk of time. What, like 3 years, something like that? 2, 3 years that the Accords were in effect.
What do you mean? Because the Accords. With that being said, from Civil War to Infinity
And
War, um, like we still have that 5 year gap after that. So.
what I'm saying is, so Civil War to Infinity War, I can't remember solid 2 or 3 years. I'm kind of leaning on two.
Hmm.
We know that the Accords were still in effect at the start of Infinity War, but we don't know when it was dissolved. I'm kind of guessing it would make sense that once the snap happened, or like when people were like snapped away,
Hmm.
if anything, maybe that's when it was dissolved, because obviously the world is in crisis, and people might have been like, hey, like the Sokovia Accords may have actually put us at a vulnerable point. You know what I mean? We kind of dismantled the Avengers, and maybe this is what you know what I'm saying? Like, I wonder if that's the point that the Accords was dissolved, like the moment that people were snapped away, or maybe it is when everyone was returned back. So that's what I'm wondering. If I have a feeling it was after the events of Infinity War, which would mean that the Accords were in effect for like 2 years. But I don't know. What do you think? What are your thoughts?
Right now, it's just a huge question mark. Just because, uh, if that were the case, I don't know where the was it the DODC, is that what it's called?
Mm-hmm. The
The
DODC.
where they would lie, because as of right now we know them to be the quote unquote policing force of superpowered beings, and they were here in this episode as well. So I wonder if it was more so, did they come more so into power after the Accords were pretty much dismantled, basically.
Who knows? It's hard to say. I guess the first time that we see him really play a big role was in No Way Home, right? That's when we kind of really started to see the shift into them becoming more of an authority figure, not necessarily just like a cleanup crew,
Right. Right.
And so I wonder, and I feel like there is probably a correlation between the two. Like maybe that is when, maybe it's actually when the Accords were created. Maybe that's when the DODC became somewhat of an authority force, and maybe we're just seeing them now having been years into their, I don't want to say the reign, but gain of power. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Another thing is like, well, being that Matt Murdock is reminding them that the Sokovia Accords have been repealed, and possibly this is actually maybe a little closer to when people were returned. And I'm just using these two events as a potential reason to why they were dismantled, just because they're big events in the world, and I'm just assuming that's maybe the catalyst to why they were dissolved. Um, and I don't know, but like I'm looking back at the statement of him saying, like, may I remind you the Sokovia Accords have been repealed, makes me feel like maybe it was something actually more recent. So maybe it was when people were snapped back in, that's when it was repealed.
Mm-hmm.
Um, which would mean maybe that if it is correlated to like the Sokovia Accords, it would make sense how the DODC had so much time to kind of build such a power in like our government. You know what I mean? Pretty much 7 years if you add the time between Civil War to now.
Well,
You know?
let's continue to backtrack. The DODC, whether we know it or not, I mean, we find out later in Homecoming, they've been in the picture since New York. Initially since the cleanup crew. So who's to say that like they've been gaining power since? If uh, do you know the year of New York was at 2012?
I think so. Yeah.
So from 2012 to whatever year this is, because this is now beyond Endgame, and we have no
Yep.
idea what the official year. This may be like 2030 right now in
We
the
have the
MCU.
official year. We do. We just don't have it on hand, and I don't want to look it up. But it's you're right. Like maybe it was a slow build, and maybe the Sokovia Accords was that final gateway for them to really become a true authority figure. But I think you're right in saying that maybe something like their power may have been directly correlated to the bringing of the Sokovia Accords.
Mm-hmm.
Being that they were already something or an entity involved in superhero like items, like
Mm-hmm.
maybe they're like, you know what, like it would make sense, since you guys already have like an authority on this, for you guys also to be an authority figure behind the Sokovia Accords. So it's just interesting. It's interesting.
Yeah.
um we definitely need, like, in terms of, I know we kind of like railed off the episode a little bit, but the DODC has been so present in like this phase, but we still don't really know very much about them, like what their jurisdiction is.
Right.
They're the Department of Damage Control, right? But a lot of this has nothing to do with the actual damage, but they're going after a lot of the heroes,
Mm-hmm.
No Way Home, and we see it in Miss Marvel, and we're seeing it again here. So they kind of become the go-to like police force for the superheroes, and we don't really know how that happened. We don't know their jurisdiction, none of that. So I think we're definitely going to see more of it, and I wonder in what series or movie they're going to actually play the main villain, because we haven't seen that yet. They've been very much in the background. I thought Miss Marvel was going to be the case, but even then, not really.
We need honestly another one of these Marvel encyclopedias, just again, to now give us a little bit more clarification on certain government factions. certain gods and goddesses, certain just hierarchy. We need a
A
hierarchy
hierarchy.
chart of the MCU. You
A
know,
flow chart.
yes, please. It's like I know we kind of freestyled our power ranking there, and we believe that to be true. But we want an actual ranking, or just yes, like you said, a flow chart of who is related to what, who's above what, and I just need answers.
We need some clarity. Like we've talked about this, and I feel like it's kind of a good place to kind of discuss this because we're approaching the end of this phase. This phase really is just laying out so many things with very little connection to each other, very little connection to what we know will be the final part of this saga.
Mm-hmm.
So I really, really expect the following phase to start to connect the dots in a way that makes it clearer for us to see that endpoint. You know what I mean? And I think for them to do that, like there's, I mean, we have so many questions. It's like we're gonna do have to do a Marvel wrap up like we did last year, and obviously we will. But honestly, this phase, if more than anything, just provokes more questions than answers, and I think that's fine, being that it's the first phase of this saga. You know, um, which means phase like this next phase coming up really has to start to give us some answers. But I think we should like line up our questions. Like that's what I think the Marvel wrap up is going to end up being like. Where is Vision?
Yes.
Define what happened in those 5 years. What's the DODC doing? You know, like all of that.
I'm not. I'm not a seamstress, right? I've never sewed. I've never knitted. I've never I've attempted to put the little string through the needle and maybe like stitch up a hole in a shirt or whatnot. But there are so many loose strings here, and I can imagine whoever like what who like there's somebody in the Marvel universe or at Marvel Studios that has the answers to where, if I mean, even if not, they're finding all of these strings and then writing to initially get that close, and it's just one of those fact checkers, the checkers that we need, to where I'm just like, how y'all gonna do it? How are we now getting? We're about to get Adam Warlock like next year. You know what I'm saying? And that string was left what, 4 years ago,
4 years
5 years
ago, yeah.
ago. So
Yeah, so it's like it's not like this isn't what Marvel does. It's what Marvel does. I think it's the lack of connecting dots right now that's giving us like a frustration, because it's like I think the most simplest and first time that they released her to do this was the end credits that kind of built into the Avengers, right? We got like the end credit of Iron Man at the end of Hulk. We got the end credit for Thor at the end of Iron Man 2. Like these little things that then built into Avengers. We got some release within that phase. Like we haven't really had that moment of like connection in this phase at all. We really thought that Multiverse of Madness was going to be the place to kind of get some of that, and it really didn't. It gave us more questions than anything. And it's not like we're gonna get that in Wakanda forever. That has its own like very own intention and purpose. That's not to connect the rest of the world. So really, I think that this phase four, is just about laying out the groundwork. And it's like you
giving us
said, it's
all
like
of these,
okay,
giving us all of these just unanswered questions. It's like, yeah, you're laying
and
down
yeah,
all the groundwork, but I don't remember phase one being as confusing. And phase one,
exactly.
you had all of the same kind of questions. I feel like, but it eventually we got answers to,
Along the
not
way.
yeah, along the way, and it's not even necessarily like direct answers to the end, because of course we got that by the end of phase three, but we already knew what was going on, to where here, where it's like they went everywhere, and we have no
Mm-hmm.
idea what's connected to what, and vice versa. Like the Eternals, where are they going? Who is connected to them? How are they going to connect that to the universe, being that they kind of made that a whole separate project that they didn't want to get back to until that one little excerpt in She-Hulk on the internet. But it there's a shit ton of, pardon my language, but just a ton of just unanswered questions here, to where I know, if anything, they could tie it up, but right now, by the end of phase four, we're getting Black Panther, and I'm already assuming Black Panther isn't going to answer any questions
Yeah,
at
let's
all.
safely say that.
You know,
No,
so
because it's not meant to.
right,
It's not meant to. And it's like you said, it's not the issue of them like leaving these loose strings because we know Marvel delivers, right? I mean, look at Adam Warlock as a good example, a very recent one coming up. It took 4 years for us to really like get that delivered.
right.
So we know it. They're capable of doing it. We have enough like rapport, and I think you know what's the word, trust in Marvel that they can do it. But also it's like, dude, it's kind of a lot. It's kind of a lot. Like at
Hmm.
least by the end of the first phase of this entire journey with Marvel, we had a lot of loose strings, but also we had maybe like 20% of them kind of starting to create a braid, and here it's literally just like, okay, I have so many strings and there's just way too much room for interpretation. Obviously, it's like the room for interpretation is fun. That's where the fandom gets to do what it does best and theorize, but I feel like they just need to give us a tiny bit more. And we're at the forefront of it. Like that's all we do here. We theorize. We go pretty deep into these topics with very little information. But it's like
Can I
it's
point
it's.
out?
Go ahead.
I want to
Yeah.
point out the only string that they tied the knot on in Phase 4 was Natasha Romanoff, and that was it.
Yeah, and it's like that's. I mean, I think they did such a great send off for her. Like that film was for her. We agreed that I think if they would have given her more films, it wouldn't have been like as uh limiting in terms of the action. But it's like it needed to give the story because it was her send off. Like that was done so well, and it served its purpose, and it gave us Yelena Belova, and he gave us like the Red Guardian, which are all going to be present in like the Thunderbolts, and they mean something, But
Hmm.
it's like, but that's kind of like the final wrap up of the original saga. It's not necessarily like wrapping up or creating a new string for this new saga or even this phase. So yes, but also it doesn't serve the purpose that we're kind of like asking for. So I think I think it's I don't know. It's concerning. It's just a lot. Like, can Marvel deliver?
Phase 1 was 6 movies.
We've
Phase
had,
Phase 4 is maybe like 6 movies and shows. You know, it's just
yeah,
it's
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 a lot.
it's a lot to. They put this on their plate and now they're gonna have to answer for it. I'm sorry. I'm not gonna.
You made
I'm
your
not. Yeah,
bed. You have
exactly.
to sleep in it. Like, and
Yep.
something, I feel like if they can do this in the second, or I'm sorry, I'm saying the second phase of this saga, but phase five, if they
Right.
can do this well in phase five, because phase five really, the purpose is truly just to get all, like maybe 75% of these questions answered, because then the phase that follows phase six, which is the final phase of the saga, is meant to give us the action that I think this is lacking. You know what I mean? Like the action that we got from like Iron Man, from Avengers, from Infinity War, from Civil War. You know what I mean? Like those iconic fight scenes that mean something. Like we've gotten some good like pieces, but not like the weight that they used to carry. And it's like I love a lot of the stories that they've built. But it's like, okay, this phase is just laying it out. We got a lot new people, not really an assembly of teams just yet. This next phase has to give us answers so that the final phase we can just enjoy like these, what I hope to be well orchestrated, well meaning, well weighted like fights that mean something, because we've gotten time to really get to know these characters. I don't know. I have high expectations because Marvel is setting up the base for so much. It's worrisome because it's like, I don't know if they can do it. It's a lot. We know they're overwhelming their team,
Quick question.
it's crazy. I don't know.
Is Kang Dynasty, is that phase 6?
That is SpaceX. Yeah.
So as of right now, phase 4 and phase 5, like you mentioned, we're not getting any like Avengers like team build ups or anything, you know. So as of right now, this is this these two phases, 4 and 5. I'm just now to understand it's just going to be a whole bunch of individual work, individual products, and everything like that. Yeah, we're gonna get the Thunderbolts, but as of right now, everybody's kind of been more so having their own thing. The only team I think we got was Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and that was just like two
Mm.
characters out of the hundreds, you know. But like now it's two.
Yeah.
It's like we're not gonna get a team kind of build up here, phase one. I mean phase four, and then phase five. If that's the case, if we're just getting the Thunderbolts, I don't. It's like yeah, I know I'm pretty sure I'm going to enjoy the Thunderbolts, but that's not going to be the quote unquote team that's going to the Secret Wars. You know, like we want the team that's going to have the characters that we know uh, already, and the characters that we expect from what we got in the comics, which include mutants.
Yeah, and you know something? Like I wouldn't say this isn't the team that's going to end up on the battlefield of Secret Wars because, like we saw in Infinity War, or I'm sorry, in Endgame, it's a multitude of teams kind of combining to create this army, and I think that's what we're going to see. And the Thunderbolts are going to play a part of it, just like the Guardians of the Galaxy, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I think actually like Phase Five is going to be a phase to kind of bring teams together because I think that's part of the answering of the questions, you know, because if we get to the battlefield in phase six without the connections and relationships that these characters will mold to each other, the weight and the stakes aren't as severe as what we got in Endgame and Infinity War. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? Like, I think the reason that Infinity War and Endgame means so much is because the characters have genuine connections to each other and they have a lot to lose in losing, like, you know what I mean? Like the relationship between Thor and Cap and Iron Man alone, like that little bundle, I think is such a great example of what I'm talking about. And I feel like that's what they need to curate in season.
I got you.
In well, why am I losing my words?
Phase.
In phase five, like they have to do that in phase five because it needs to mean something once we get to that battlefield. Otherwise, there's no weight, there's no stakes. You know what I mean?
So
So, go ahead.
with everything being said, because I promise y'all we're gonna get back to She-Hulk here, okay?
This
But
is just hot topic. I'm
say
enjoying this, dude.
say
It's good.
say when it comes down uh, to a huge team, right? And not necessarily a huge team. Let me just ask: do you think we'll get a 616 version of the Illuminati and sub out Tony Stark with Namor?
Mm, possibly, and maybe they're part of the unity that kind of brings that army together by the time that we get to that battlefield for Secret Wars.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know, the Illuminati is basically just like the leaders of these different sectors and teams and groups that help to coordinate their the way that they kind of go up against their foes on Earth, you know. And
Mm-hmm.
so it would make sense for 616 to end up getting an Illuminati, and maybe they're the ones that help unify those teams to get them onto the battlefield in Secret Wars. You know what I mean? So I feel like that makes a lot of sense for them to have that.
I feel like there has to be, and if it's just almost identical to the Illuminati that we got in Strange, I feel like we would need Captain Marvel, and her sector would be the Scrolls and any other species intergalactic. We would have Namor and his Atlanteans. We would have Professor X and the mutants. Doctor Strange, being that he has America, that is the multiversal jumping team that of the Mystic Arts, you know. So we kind of broke it down in our power rankings, but like if anything, each level of those power rankings, each category, I can imagine being those kind of teams that end up kind of colliding or not even colliding, coming together to fight the big boss in Secret Wars.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm really excited to talk about this just because I think I don't know. It's like I love all the characters we're getting to meet, and you know, especially with the shows, I think we're getting to meet them in a very intimate way. You know, and so I'm excited to see when they start to kind of interact, so that the relationships have weight. And I don't know. I want to experience something again, like Infinity War and Endgame, but it's like keep in mind that was the first time that was ever done. You know, to lead into something so big with so many different projects and so many different characters and make it as epic and amazing as it was, like it's crazy that they were able to do it once. Can they do it twice? Especially with the layout that they're giving themselves. Like, is this realistic? Is this manageable? Can they do it? I mean, I as a fan am like hoping yes, but also I'm a little worried. So it's I don't know. It's kind of it's an interesting conversation to be
it
had.
has to come together to make sense, you know.
Yeah.
And we shall see, you know. But back to She-Hulk.
Back to that was a big commercial break.
Right, right. Sorry about
We
that.
like got into the first 5 minutes of She-Hulk. We're literally like just barely get into the bar scene.
Wait, so it's at the hour and 20 mark. So that was a good 20 minutes because I made a note that at the hour mark we were almost kind of wrapping up the Sokovia Accords. So it was a good 20 minutes of what
Okay.
MCU has hopefully coming. Just our hopes,
I
you know,
feel
hopes
proud
and
of that.
dreams.
I feel very proud of that discourse. That was good.
Um,
Um,
so yeah, where did we leave off? The courtroom, the bar. We were at the bar. That's where we
we're
were.
at the bar,
Mm-hmm.
and in this bar, I think we see that Jennifer Walters and Matt Murdock actually have like this really nice moment. And Matt Murdock expresses that there's a lot of good that she can do, not just within the realm of the courtroom, but also as She-Hulk. Like he being a vigilante sees this himself that
Mm-hmm.
he's able to do so much within like um the the law,
Mm-hmm.
but he understands that sometimes the law does fail, and that's where Daredevil comes in, and that's what he's kind of inspiring her to do. And this was kind of foreshadowed in the recap scenes, right? Because we get like part of the recap is Hulk when he tells She-Hulk, like, you
You're a
know,
superhero.
that superheroing is a little bit part of the job, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And so it was a really cool conversation to kind of get her to kind of think, like, oh, like she can get the best of both worlds, you know?
Yeah. But see, I think if anything, that if she were to go that route, that would be. I don't even think she could do that. Just because what Matt has over her is the secret identity.
Very true. Very true.
If she were to take the law in one hand as She-Hulk and then go to the streets of She-Hulk, she's still She-Hulk, and anybody can point her out like in a lineup. Be like, oh, that's her fighting crime, you know. So she's breaking the rules that she's actually trying to enforce as a lawyer as well.
Yeah, actually, this is super very true. This is very true, and also it's like she is a celebrity. Like I know Matt Murdock made that distinction between superheroes and celebrities. It's a very different dynamic, but in her case, she is a celebrity. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? Like they treat her like that in the media. And it's not like she is like an active superhero as of yet. I think we see some
Right.
action in this episode, but for the most part, she's just this has been like what they kind of made it to be, which is like a sitcom. It's like
Yeah.
it's a law show.
Yeah, like, and I mean, even when it came down to Luke getting kidnapped, and then they're on the roof and they're having that conversation, and then Daredevil's about to do the Daredevil that we know of. She was just like, "Oh, I can do this," and he was just like, "But you don't do that, though." Like she has stated clearly that she doesn't want to be a superhero since day one, and now I guess, being all googly eyed, she's trying to like impress and Matt Murdock, be like, but I can do this, da 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 da. And I'm just like,
Well,
uh,
honestly, it's not even that. Like, I wouldn't reduce it to just that. Is that a part of it? Hell yeah! Like, she's fighting side by side by this like guy that she's obviously attracted to, and we're digging the vibes too.
mm-hmm,
But keep in mind, like when she went after who she didn't when she went after Daredevil, she didn't know she was going to be going after him.
mm-hmm,
When she got the call from Leapfrog, um, it's really because she was inspired by what Matt Murdock said. It's not like she knew he was going to be there. You know what I
right,
mean? So she assembled really because she was inspired by what he said, and she wanted to kind of, I think, try out that a taste of, I guess, that vigilanteism, and he ended up being there too. So I think what you said has some truth in it, but like, let's not reduce it to just that.
but let's reduce it just because, like, I get it. It's she right now. I don't want to say it's just because she's into him, but she hasn't fought crime this entire season. Like the person who or the people that jumped her in whatever episode that was, it wasn't like she was out here looking for it. She is not a vigilante, you know. So like now in finding out who is actually after Leapfrog and coming to find out, oh, it is Matt Murdock. I got more of the, oh well, you know, I'm. It's like I don't want to say it was just like, yeah, she's digging the vibes, but because she's digging the vibes, now she's feeling herself and trying to show off as She-Hulk.
And like I said, that's definitely an influence. I'm just saying that she was genuinely inspired by what Matt Murdock said, and that you can do the best of both worlds. Like you aren't just limited to what Jennifer Walters can do in the courtroom, because she showed up with her freaking superhero suit that she never thought she was going to actually wear, and that was before she knew that Matt Murdock was on the scene. Obviously,
But
being that
but
he's there, hell yeah, she's trying to flex and kind of do more and be a little bit more involved, but she kind of took a step into vigilantism because she was genuinely inspired by what he said.
so
You know what I mean?
so
It doesn't.
say
It's
no
not
no
as
no no
reduced to what you're
stop right
saying.
there. Just because now what you're saying is without that conversation, without Matt Murdock talking about the two sides of the coin, right? If her client called her, right, and was in trouble and being attacked or whatnot, you still you believe if he didn't talk to her about that, then she wouldn't have gone out there to save her client.
Possibly not. I mean, he is an a hole. Like, why would she go? You know what I mean? And the other situation where she did kind of come in to help, Wong was there. You know what I mean? So she may not have, and if she had, like, it begs the question, like, would she have grabbed like the suit? You know what I mean? Like, I think grabbing the suit is just kind of a step forward into kind of accepting that vigilantism that comes with being a super powered individual. And I would say Matt Murdock was a little bit of a catalyst of that, because he did kind of spark a little something interest in that. Like, I'm just saying, I feel like the steps that we did see happen can't just be reduced to the fact that she has a crush on Matt Murdock, because I think that's very belittling, which is kind of on the theme of what happens in this whole series, which is that women get kind of belittled and a little bit like talked down to. So, boom.
I don't know. I don't like it. I really don't.
I am not debating that, like, when they're in the battle and then they're like actually trying to, take down the goons, right? I'm not saying that that wasn't like him being there wasn't an influence for her kind of wanting to flex and do more on the scene. What I'm saying is that her step into, like, her first step into really actively kind of like tasting like the superheroism, the vigilantism. Like, I feel like Matt Murdock sparked something
Oh
to
no,
kind of
I
push her to do
understand.
that, you know?
I understand. I understand your point. Like like I'm going now beyond the whole of 30 aspect of it. I'm just saying like I'm now we're kind of reducing it to the point to where whether or not he had this conversation with her about the two sides, would she have answered the call? You know, and you're saying if if Matt did tell her this, then yes, she would have put on the super suit and protected her client. But if Matt didn't have this conversation, then she probably would. You're
It's
saying
TBD.
but the way you're phrasing it is like she probably would have left him hanging.
Well, it's TBD. We don't know. All I'm saying is that, because what I'm debating specifically is when you said let's reduce it to just a crush, because I think that's very against what they're trying to do with this show and the
Mm-hmm.
theme.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to like, would she have like gone to help regardless of that? It's like TBD. What I'm saying is that her like initiative to go into this situation and kind of play the vigilante, if you will, isn't just because she has a crush. You know what I mean? That's all I wanted to say.
I'm just kind of thinking about how earlier this season she kind of did the same thing for the Magic Man. So she'll answer a
Because Wong
call
was there.
and all right, she'll answer a call and be She-Hulk if need be. So we can I guess we can just end it on that. I think she'll answer the call.
Regardless if she has a crush.
Right.
Done. Case closed. We're moving on.
Mm-hmm.
Before we go into the whole leapfrog, lily pad, all of that goons and henchmen conversation, one piece that we kind of haven't mentioned just yet, and I forgot his name, but it's one of the guys that she took on a date. He's like this very
Creepy guy.
pompous, like very yeah, that, you know, the guy. Do you
Mm-hmm.
have the name?
No, I don't know. I mean,
Okay.
I have the
We don't
IMDb
need
up.
his name.
Okay. Okay. All right.
No, if you can look it up, that'd be fine, because I think he's gonna honestly come up in the next episode too. But
He goes
he gives
by
There we go.
Mm-hmm.
So Todd gives Jennifer Walters a call because he kind of has like another case for her. He basically went to an auction and bought what we know to be like stolen Wakandan like weaponry,
Right.
right? And of course, like the Wakandans found out. We know this, like they want their stuff back because, like he said, like they were stolen by colonizers, essentially, you
Right.
know.
Right.
And so he is asking for help on her, like from her end. And I just wanted to like mention this because I think it's gonna come up again, maybe not again, but I feel like this is like a little taste of what we're kind of seeing in the trailers for Wakanda because we do see like a lot of different countries, which we kind of see with like the soldiers trying to take advantage of like Wakanda and like weaponry, you know. So I kind of like that they set the seed here in a very subtle way. And in addition, I thought it was funny because obviously we're just getting off a Harry Potter vibe, or I am. And so what's like fresh on my mind is kind of like Harry Potter lore. Are you familiar with like the I think it's the Goblin, like the Goblin War that happened in like the Harry Potter world? Do you know what I'm talking about? Do you know what I'm
Mm-mm.
discussing? Well, basically like
If that was a
Goblin,
question in our little trivia game, I wouldn't have
we
got
would have
that.
lost.
Yep, I would have lost.
Well, basically, like, you know, I think goblins were fighting to have a little bit more rights in the wizarding world because they were treated like second class citizens.
Mm-hmm.
And the way, like, Goblin made weaponry like the sword of Godric Gryffindor,
Correct.
the way that the goblins kind of view the purchase and exchange of their items, if it's kind of like this: if I have like if I made something and you bought it,
Mm-hmm.
if you die, that belongs to me because I'm the original owner. Where that's typically not how it goes. You know,
No.
that typically
Yeah.
will, you know what I'm saying? Like it's not. And so, in like, I think you even see it in like one of the last few films when, right, because Dumbledore leaves the sword of Godric Gryffindor in his will to Harry Potter, but in the books, I believe it's one of the goblins makes a claim to the fact that that wasn't his place to actually do that because it's made by goblins, and so
Mm-hmm.
therefore, when the purchaser of that weapon dies, it goes back to me. I feel like the Wakandans have like a similar thing of like, I don't care that you bought it. You may have the receipt. That is ours. And so it goes back to the it goes back to like the original makers. You know what I mean? So it's just one of the things that it kind of like reminded me of because, like I said, I'm fresh in like the Harry Potter vibes right now.
Well, we don't know for sure what made it out of Wakanda when Killmonger was king. So who's to say that, like, because initially his whole plan was to get vibranium out to the world to all the, well, I guess all the Wakandans just to kind of almost take over the world or whatnot. But who's to say that a shipment got lost and taken over by, I don't know, scavengers or whatnot? We may get more from this movie that's coming out soon, but uh, there's been stuff in play in Wakanda for the last few years since Black Panther that is kind of putting vibranium out there, and I
Mm-hmm.
feel like what he's saying is kind of making sense. Like it's like they want me to return it just because of certain colonizers or whatnot. But now since like T'Challa kind of opened the gates and at the very end of the movie, uh, I would see that kind of being like a conflict of the country Wakanda right now, just people trying to get more and more vibranium out.
And even in like the first Black Panther, we see an example of this, maybe in like a micro level because it was a mask, not necessarily like a piece of weapon, but or a weapon, and it was made out of vibranium. And remember, like they kind of go like what do they say? It's like, oh, this one thing is made out of vibranium, so therefore we have to bring it back to Wakanda. They had like a conversation about it even in the first one. So it's like we've had small instances of this, and I'm sure with like what you mentioned, kind of opening the gates up of Wakanda to the rest of the world, along with even the Battle of Endgame. Like I'm sure like Wakandan soldiers fell like in the battle. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
safe to assume some of them died, you know, and so it's like weapons were probably left and the DODC and everything, you know. So there's a lot of room to say like to kind of suggest where some of these items um were kind of left in the outskirts of the world and outskirts of Wakanda, and obviously one of them came into the hands of Todd, and now he's dealing with like what I can assume to be the Dora Milaje, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I was gonna say, how does this scene end? Is this where she gets the phone call in the middle of like the as she's like sitting with that guy? Is that what happens?
Oh, he tried to be a super creep, give her some wine and whatnot, and then like
Oh
he
yeah, and
moved over
she
to
yeah.
her, and then she just walked quick question. Actually, no, I lost it. It has something. Oh, here it is. Got it. Found it. So, do you think this is a hypothetical question? Do you think, if anything, if the goons that tried to rob her use the same tools but made a vibranium, do you think that would have been more effective than Asgardian tools?
That's a question. That's a good question. Does vibranium penetrate the impenetrable skin of She-Hulk?
Mm-hmm. Just a
Is there
question.
an example of Hulk being in battle that we can probably maybe use for this? Do you know?
No.
I can't think of an instance where we could, um, because in Civil War, Hulk wasn't there to say, see how he goes up against Black Panther.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't Hulk that goes in, who fights on the battlefield of Wakanda in
Mm-hmm.
Infinity War, and I can't think of anything in Endgame that would give us an idea. So I don't know. It's a big TBD, actually. What I was going to say though is, okay, so there's been the big question mark of who's behind these like goons or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And after this episode, I'm wondering if it's Todd because he has the resources. He's very rich. He's also very stupid, which would make sense as to why they were so unsuccessful when they tried the hit the first time, which we talked about, which is why we said it could not be um the power broker because
Mm-hmm.
the power broker would go about this a little bit smarter. I wonder if it's Todd. Like I kind of feel like that's where I'm leaning. What do you think?
I think that makes sense just because of the very first meeting of him calling her a specimen, you know? So
It's weird.
it's like creep vibes for one, but now it's like he's able to spend a quote unquote milli on a vibranium spear. And who's to
That
say
means a
that,
million, everybody.
yeah. Who's to say that he hasn't bought similar tech like that? Like, let's say he tried to buy Asgardian tech, give it to some goons, and then try to pierce the skin. And who's to say that he has now more of not only just a spear, but something else, just to try to get the blood of She-Hulk. And being that he was at this gala, who's to say that he was there to kind of oversee uh,
The event.
this group kind of go after her. He may be in connection to this website that's trying to take out She-Hulk.
Yeah, I feel like honestly, it points a lot to him because otherwise, why would they just bring him in for this little scene? Obviously, the scene kind of gave us quite a lot with quite a little.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of brings Wakanda back into the just the episode, and we kind of see who's behind all of these attacks.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, and so from here, this is where we get into the chase scene, leapfrog towards the lily pad. Oh my god, I can't. The famous secret layer
What?
that was funny to me because that's basically like those are two like it's like two negatives. You know what I mean?
I'm lost. Like, what do you mean?
When Leapfrog is like onto the lily pad, and I think it's Jennifer Walters that's like the why is like, my famous secret layer.
Oh, true. Got you.
It's just so funny.
Mm.
I thought that was so
I look
funny.
at
I
you.
like that.
Sorry.
It's just too good. Let's see. Okay, so we get the super suit. We get Matt Murdock. And let's see, we get the Hulk clap again.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what it is. I mean, it seems I don't know. It seems like it's the first thing you would do when you capture someone with a mask on, right? Like Scooby Doo it. You just pull off the mask and you get the reveal.
Mm-hmm.
So we shouldn't be surprised that She Hulk does that. But also, part of me is like, dude, how dare you? Like that's disrespectful. Like I don't know if that makes sense. Like I was offended. For me, it felt like she broke a rule. You know what I
But
mean?
she,
Because Matt Murdock was so easily unmasked.
but she was like, I don't know, because she kind of made it clear. She was like, well, you look like some random devil trying to hurt my client. So
Yeah,
yeah.
she wouldn't know any different. Like
Right.
it's not like my feelings aren't justified because, like I said, it makes sense. You would Scooby Doo it and take off the mask. That's the first thing you would do when you capture some masked vigilante.
Mm-hmm.
Or in this case, like she thought this was like a bad guy. But like for some reason, I felt like offended. I was just like, this is a law, miss. Like that's the disrespect. But I just thought it was so funny to see Matt Murdock unmasked so quickly. Like it almost seemed wrong. It was interesting to me.
Yeah.
But we learned that the leapfrog kidnapped Luke to
Mm-hmm.
basically force him to make him new suits, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And we learned that this that Leapfrog actually has a bunch of let me see, I just want to make sure I'm using the terminology right. Which one is it? Is it henchmen? Hold on. I have the notes specifically.
I don't have the notes just because it was just a conversation between them and they never kind of just or clarified what was what, whether goons or henchmen. Goons do it for the money or something like that, or I forgot
That's
what
what
it
it
was.
is. It's goons do it for the money, and then henchmen do it because they genuinely believe in the cause. And it is just a conversation between the two, but I think it kind of serves as more than that because in this situation, right? The leapfrog in the lily pad with his tadpoles, like those are paid goons, right? They're not involved in the cause, like they don't really believe in what's going on. They're kind of like this guy's a lunatic, but
Mm-hmm.
we get paid, you know?
Mm-hmm.
How, and you contrast that with the henchmen of whoever's behind these like cyber threats and like the whole attack that has kind of been like looming into this final point of this episode,
Mm-hmm.
because those are people who genuinely believe in the cause.
Yeah.
You know, those are henchmen. So it served more than just like a little bit of a back and forth
Look at
between the
you
two.
connecting dots.
Because it kind of, what was
I said,
that?
look at you connecting dots.
Look at me. But I thought it was cool because at first it kind of just seemed like almost like when we get the like Falcon and Falcon in the Winter Soldier, and he is talking about like the big three, right? Like what are the
Wizards,
big three?
aliens,
Wizards,
and
aliens,
robots.
and robots. Yeah, at first it kind of played off like just that, just kind of a funny outline of some basic terminology used in like the superhero films and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But it kind of serves more than that, like we saw. So I thought that was actually really cool.
Yeah. Um. So goons are taken care of. Luke is saved. The goons like initially like I was hoping we were gonna get full on like season one of Daredevil, kind of like him walking in a hallway taking out goons left and right. But of course, he asked She-Hulk to kind of stay and keep watch or whatnot, and she just smashed her way through the ceiling. She said something smash. She's like, "That's a She-Hulk smash" or something like that.
And
Which
Matt has like secondhand embarrassment. Like this is the piece that you were like in discussion with of like this is her just like flexing because she's got a crush on Matt Murdock,
mm-hmm.
and it's secondhand embarrassment for Matt and for us.
Yeah, it's like okay, I'm trying to take care of this real quick, She-Hulk. you know,
Damn.
but I don't think. Oh no, he didn't escape. He jumped out of a window, but he didn't go anywhere. So he ended up like hurting himself, right? Leapfrog.
Yes,
Yeah.
and then he just gets like captured. And so they're all captured. Shield is forgiven by Luke, which is great because she still needs a dress for the gala.
Mm-hmm.
And so she and Daredevil are on like this like what are they called? Like the
Billboard.
boards, the billboard. And this is where like he's like he says like normally I don't talk to like the police, and she's like I guess the brooding comes with a secret identity, which I think is funny because it's so true. It's
Mm-hmm.
only the ones that have secret identities that have the brooding, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where like obviously they're both feeling each other, but Matt Murdock lives on like the other side of the country, so therefore it's kind of like they're not going to be able to really make this thing work. But they have like a nice special night, and She-Hulk is so happy. The next day, her friend comes in. They're getting ready for the gala, and I think this is my favorite
Wall breaks.
of the wall breaks we've had so far because I don't know what it is. Like she's making it plain and clear. Like, oh no, this is the thing. This is the flip. This is the way that it's done. Although it's done comically, it still gives you a tiniest sense of like, oh my god, something bad's gonna happen. Like the most minute of anxiety, and then she's like, it's fine, let's just go. And then I don't know. I like the way they orchestrated it, and I like the way that scene served. It was good. It was a really good example of
Yeah.
fourth wall break.
Yeah. So we from there we get to the gala. That gala, she gets an award, but while receiving her award for best lawyer, the group puts all of her, I guess, indiscretions on the big screen for everybody to see, and she finally hulks out. Like we haven't really seen that, maybe since Mexico with her cousin, and it was brief, but we haven't really got that, and I think this is the point to where she actually loses control. This isn't like the actual Jennifer Walters here. This is actual like She-Hulk hulking out, and I was wondering if it was ever going to get to the point because that's what I thought we were going to get in episode one, and we were going to try to somehow learn how to control it just so you can get the best of both worlds like Bruce Banner. But now I think this was like her hulking out.
I mean, yeah, like everyone has their breaking point, and I think this would definitely do it. Like, I mean, these people are, I mean, it's funny because they're a reflection of something that is part of our fan base. There's a very small, like, group of like extremists that really have these genuine comments when it comes to the female superheroes we see on projects.
Mm-hmm.
And, like they basically just show all like it's like a lack of privacy, her text messages, like one of the guys that she was dating and that that like basically like their whole like intimate moment was recorded,
Yeah.
and so everyone has their breaking point. This would definitely do it. I think this would do it for most people, and so she finally does Hulk out, and the people respond in a way that we're very familiar with because we've seen it happen to Hulk,
Mm-hmm.
himself. And so I think she's finally experiencing something that she hasn't really been able to fully empathize with Hulk, and it was something that kind of pissed us off in the first episode. Like you don't know his pain.
Right.
And so yeah, this is kind of where this episode ends, and it's honestly really, it's just like it's scary because people like this actually exist, and this is not too far off from what you see written in a lot of like deep Reddit subs of like these people,
Sure.
like deep misogynistics that have like just, I don't know, it's sad. But
Is it weird how fast the DODC showed up?
is it weird how fast the DOD? Something, I don't know how I feel about that. Like, I wonder if they're close by just because, kind of like with Miss Marvel, you know what I mean? They're aware of her, they were trying to find her and stuff like that. I wonder if just because she is a new hero, they're maybe just close by. You know what I mean? Like, I wonder if that's what it is.
I don't
Uh,
know. It's like the event happens and then boom, they're at the gate. You know what I'm saying? It's just like
yeah.
it's weird. Like, and I'm not mad that it's them because now they're kind of making it clear here that now they're gonna bring her in for questioning or whatnot. But I don't know. It was just a random thought. Like, it's not any other police. It's specifically the DODC that are coming to
Yeah.
approach her.
I mean, it's definitely made clear that whenever there's a problem with superheroed individuals, it seems like the DODC are the ones who are dispatched.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't like take it past them for this to be more than just like maybe them doing kind of like what Nat does in Avengers.
Mm-hmm.
When she approaches Hulk, the whole place is actually surrounded by Shield agents,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I wouldn't be surprised if that was the situation, but also it's like they're a sketchy group. Like I wouldn't be surprised if they have a different motive as to why they were so close by.
Yeah.
You know,
To be revealed
to be revealed.
next.
I like you said, like this next episode. I mean, very well might like start off with Jennifer Walters being questioned or just detained. Because I think the reason for her lashing out is very clear. I don't know what much they would ask of her.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe Matt Murdock is going to be the one to like bail her out. I'm not sure, but just because I'd love to see Matt Murdock in the final, like whatever final fight scene this is going to lead into.
We're not
I feel
getting
like it'd be cool to
it's
see
over.
them. What was that?
We're not getting Matt Murdock anymore. It's over.
The
He
reality is, you're probably
he
right
flew
because
out.
they don't give us too much.
Yep. He said he
They
was
don't give us
flying
too
out that
much.
day, so he's on a
Ah, that's
flight.
right.
He's on a flight to New York right now.
Dang,
Yep.
man. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, this is kind of where this episode ends. And so it's yeah, like I think Marvel did a very interesting approach with this whole series, really, in kind of having like the fan base, like the questions, the theories the fan base has kind of bled and put it into the show with trivial things like, is Cap a virgin? The freaking statue sticking out of the sea,
Mm-hmm.
and also things that are a little bit more serious, like the fact that there is actually like a very like tight knit group section of the fandom that have these genuine like comments
Yeah.
when it comes to like, honestly, like I think after this episode, in kind of preparation for today's show,
Mm-hmm.
looking up some of the discourse, and it was actually very sad and scary to see that a lot of the discourse I kind of found myself in, it was people being like, when did I think the one that I found that I was just like, oh my god, this is disgusting. I'm just gonna stop looking. Is like, is She-Hulk a oh, is Jennifer Walters like a slut in the comics too? Like
Oh wow.
people basically reflecting what we're seeing on screen, which is honestly just misogyny, right? Like this is a woman who's just very comfortable with her sexuality. We see her literally go through 3 relationships in the series, which is not ridiculous. And people have this kind of response in the real. It's like a mirror, like I think Marvel is shining a mirror to this very like horrible sector of the fan base.
Yeah. Yeah. And they're shining the light, and it's like, yeah, it's still kind of more so a sitcom, but they're kind of bringing it to the forefront to kind of address it in their own way, you know.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. Kind of like we see you guys and
Mm-hmm.
we do not approve. You aren't fans.
um, okay. Well, I think that's everything that we have for today. Just because right now I actually have to get ready for a boxing match, so I'm sorry I
Oh
gotta.
my
I'm
god.
not fighting, but
You?
no,
Oh,
I'm going to a boxing match. So
I lost interest.
I
I'm just kidding.
I gotta get
I
ready
thought
for
you were
that. Yeah,
fighting.
no. Maybe in the future, and I will let you know for sure beforehand. I won't let you know the day of. Like I'll let you know
Yeah,
beforehand
I was
when I
kind of
decide to
salty. I
do
was like,
that.
cool, okay. All
Um,
right.
but I think that's it because of course we didn't get a post credit scene at all. They're just done with post credits, and now we're kind of left to
Mad.
wonder, you know. So, uh, as far as the episode, I would say it was one of the better of the season, and though it was a little cheesy at points with the whole back and forth. It was like cool, but I feel like I don't know, like soft Daredevil isn't the same.
I don't disagree. Honestly, when I saw the statement that Marvel made so bluntly, which is like, we've seen the dark and broody, now we're gonna show you guys like a different side of Daredevil,
The
a soft
Disney,
side, of this side,
the
and I
Disney
was like, no,
Daredevil.
I was like, no, and honestly, it's like, like being that he is in Jennifer Walter's show,
Mm-hmm.
it's not like that's a bad thing because it's like if you're, the vibes will change a little bit depending, I think, on what project you're looking at, right?
Right.
And so that's not the issue. But if the Daredevil show aligns with that statement, we have a problem because that means that Marvel no longer knows what we want, and that's a scary thing to think of. So
Like
I hope
why
that
even
that
bring him in?
statement,
You know, bring him into the universe if they're gonna do
exactly.
that. You know.
Exactly. So I hope that statement was solely in regards to She-Hulk because I thought it was cool. I thought it was kind of cool to see it like that. But if that bleeds into show, I'm I don't even want to talk about it. I'm going to assume that that statement is solely for his kind of merge into She-Hulk. You know,
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that is that, and I'll go for the close because you've been closing like these last couple episodes. So
felt pretty good.
yeah. You've been out here killing. So this has been another episode of the Comic Cinematic Universe with Chill and Grace. We'll be back next Friday. Everybody enjoy your weekend. Grace, you enjoy your weekend, and
You as well.
thank you. We will catch y'all next week.
Farewell, guys.
Later, guys.